Chris King, thank you very much for coming in. So give us a sense, where's the state of the race right now?
Sure. So we are less than 2 weeks. I'm on a 12-day bus tour throughout the state of Florida called Fearless for Florida, talking about the big, hard issues, working as hard as I possibly can to spread our message and to get in front of as many voters as possible.
And how would you characterize that message? What is that message?
You know, I've been the Democrat, Jim, with some big new ideas for this race. I'm the first one talking about the affordable housing crisis, talking about free community college and trade school, taking on big sugar for the benefit of the environment, speaking boldly about stand your ground and why we need to repeal it. But I think I've also, I hope, distinguished myself when it comes to political courage, to really speaking up against some of the powerful corrupting influences in this state that I think have worked their way into both parties and that need to be addressed by the next governor.
So you've really made Stand Your Ground a signature issue of your campaign. Why is that? And was it through the campaign that you came to understand Stand Your Ground in a different way? You
know, Jim, this has just become a big inspiration for me. Institutional racism and racial justice have always been a passion of my life. And I think Stand Your Ground is another one of those laws in Florida that is unfairly litigated. And you know, the McLaughlin case in Clearwater, which many of your viewers know, a 28-year-old African-American man, unarmed, 3 children with him, was shot and killed, and no arrest was made. And it didn't make a lot of sense to me. And so I got deeply involved, met the family, attended the service, and was really out there saying, this doesn't feel or look right. And for me, I think it was personal too. I have 3 children. I have 2 boys and a girl. He had 2 boys and a girl. And I think what made it different for the McLaughlin family, my involvement, was I said I truly believed if it had been me, if it had been a white man, an arrest would have been made initially. The good news is just this week an arrest was made, and I hope it's a new chapter in ending Stand Your Ground in Florida.
Do you think that you can actually get a repeal of Stand Your Ground through a Republican legislature?
I do. And I believe it's one of the gun safety laws in this state that represents the best chance of bringing folks on the right and left together. I think there are a lot of people in the law enforcement community that see this as a scary law, a bad law. I'm from Central Florida. Many folks remember the Trayvon Martin case. I've met with families across the state of Florida who've lost loved ones in Stand Your Ground cases, and it just doesn't make sense that anybody should be able to provoke someone, then say they're afraid, and then use lethal force. That's not the type of state I want to live in.
I want to talk a little bit more about the race itself. And I know, when you're a candidate and you're behind in the polls, you say the only poll that counts is the one that takes place on Election Day. I understand that. But, you know, every poll I've seen has you in 5th place. How do you make the argument to people who may be concerned that voting for you may be a wasted vote?
Sure. Well, you know, this is an uphill battle. I have no doubt about that. It's been an uphill battle the entire election. You know, it's not been easy to take on a powerful interest like sugar, which was something I did from my very first speech. It's not been easy to be the outsider taking on a political establishment in the Democratic Party that I just don't think has been very helpful at winning elections or adding much to Florida politics. I think a vote for Chris King is a vote for a new kind of politics in Florida. This is a vote for a guy who I think most people who've gotten to know me have seen, who has a deep sense of commitment and integrity, and is able not just to win in the general election, but wants to transform Florida politics and address some of the big systemic problems of Florida that conventional politicians just don't even talk about. For instance, on this tour, I'm talking about institutional racism. Since when have you heard a candidate in the final weeks of a primary, when everybody's paying attention, talk about racism and go and talk about Confederate monuments and Stand Your Ground and mass incarceration? These aren't the issues at the end of a race a lot of candidates want to talk about, but to me, they're incredibly important to be in the state that I want this to be.
The role of money in this campaign. You're not poor. I mean, you are a millionaire according to your financial disclosure forms, yet you are being dwarfed in the amount of money being spent by Philip Levine, Gwen Graham, and particularly Jeff Green. Talk about the influence of money in this race.
Sure.
You've put a lot of your own and your family's money into this race, but you're still having that trouble crossing over.
Sure. Well, I certainly have been so thankful and fortunate in business. I built an affordable housing company from scratch without using taxpayer financing that serves people across the country. But I'm running against, I say, billionaires and gazillionaires that got a lot of resources, and they're using them. And it's tough. Florida is a huge state. If there's anything I've learned in this, there's no way to understand how big Florida is unless you do this. And money is the great equalizer at getting your message out. And so my challenge as someone who's taken really no special interest money is how to get our message out and convince voters that small dollar donations to me make sense, and that I'm depending on them to share our story. One of
the things I hear, I'm sure you've heard it, and I'm sure it's probably infuriating to you, that people will say, I wish he had run for a different office. You know, that you really have come along as a candidate. You're speaking to a lot of the issues that I think people, particularly on the Democratic side, want to hear. You know, why couldn't you have run for chief financial officer or try to find a congressional seat to run for? That maybe this was too big, too quick.
Sure. Well, and I've heard that. You know, there were many people who wanted me to run for attorney general. I'm a lawyer by background, or CFO because I'm an entrepreneur. But I said early, and I've maintained it, I was not shopping for an office here. You know, I have a great gig, a great life in Central Florida. I have 3 small children. I'm married to my high school sweetheart. I run an organization that does business and philanthropic work around the country and around the world. I love what I do. This was the position that I felt could greatly amplify my ability to serve a lot more people and take an issue like affordable housing. Every year I'm serving maybe tens of thousands of people. If I was elected governor, I have a vision to be able to invest almost $1 billion in public and private monies in fixing our housing crisis, and I could serve hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people. That was what drew me to this position at this time, and for the next 2 weeks, I'm going to work as hard as I can to win it.
Chris King, I thank you very much for coming in. We'll see how things shake out, and I look forward to talking to you in the future.
Thank you so much, Joe.
Okay.